Hey guys, it's Lee Taylor. That's the 2021 Skoda Kamiq Monte Carlo, and this is a Right Lane review. The mainstream market loves a small SUV, as we know, but if you want something a little bit different in the segment, maybe something that isn't Toyota, Mazda, or Volkswagen, think Czech. Think Skoda. So Skoda being part of Volkswagen Group means they benefit from all the great Volkswagen Group tech. This Kamiq, for example, is the same platform that's used in the Polo, the Audi A1, and the VW T-Cross. But the Kamiq has its own sort of quirky take, and being a Skoda, it's going to be a bit more athletic and a bit better on the budget. What I mean by all of that is that basically the Skoda is a quirky, kind of left-of-field car, and that's pretty typical for their brand. They are a bit peripheral to the mainstream, and that's not a bad place for Skoda to be. I think overall, they're a pretty cool little brand, and they bring a more athletic focus to their cars. So it's a typical Volkswagen Group product, but they tend to be on the sharper side. And while it's not as sharp as something like Cupra or the RS line, it is a more playful car. Driving it around and living with it every day for this past week, particularly in an urban environment, has actually been quite the pleasure. You get all the normal safety suites. This car has been optioned with rear traffic, cross traffic alert, as well as blind spot monitors, but you do get forward collision warning, surround sensors, the normal suite of guaranteed safety features, and it's got a 5-star NCAP. This car feels great to live with. I mean, there's few gripes with it, one being the DCT or the 7-speed DSG in this car can be a little bit finicky at times, particularly in normal mode. If it's in sport, it's for some reason sorts its life out. But also the adaptive cruise control isn't my favorite, which is odd because I've used this cruise control system in other Volkswagen products and it's really good. It's very easy to use, but for whatever reason in this calibration it just doesn't seem to keep up. It seems to follow the car next to you instead of the car in front of you, and it will slow down for weird reasons. It doesn't seem to sense when cars are coming in out of the lane as well as some of the other products. And I'm just kind of confused because everything else is good. And then there's the part tech. Now I have griped about Volkswagen's rear view cameras for some time, and this one's probably the worst. It's really grainy, it just doesn't look that great. And for whatever reason, Volkswagen insists on putting the guidelines, the ones that move, on a little graphic next to the camera instead of on the camera, which is a little bit pointless in my opinion. But you can kind of look past that when you look at this particular car's price. Now this Skoda Kamiq is 35 grand before on roads, or just under, here in Australia, and that's a pretty good price. Now you're probably thinking, no it's not, that's a bit high, but when you look at its competitors, to get the same amount of tech in a similar sized vehicle, or even one of the smaller ones, you're looking at paying closer to 40. And that's on brands that don't have the backing of Volkswagen, for example. So there's some great value propositions within this car. Now from a dynamics perspective, it's a typical Volkswagen Group product. It feels confident at nearly any speed. It's easy to maneuver. It's a little light from feedback in the hands just because of this electronic steering system, but overall the car feels a more athletic version of the Kamiq. And the Monte Carlo variants, like this one, are not really designed to be the, set your hair on fire and go up a mountain road version. They're just supposed to be a sportier version of the normal Skoda, and it's kind of the top tier, if you will. And this car in sport mode feels pretty taut. I mean, the Monte Carlo gets the sport chassis control system, which varies the damper rate so the car doesn't roll around as much, and the gearbox becomes a bit sharper, and throttle response becomes a bit sharper, steering lightens up in sport mode. And speaking of drivetrain, this car actually has a 1.5 liter inline 4, the same one that was in the T-Roc from a few weeks ago, so it makes about 110 kilowatts and 250 newton meters of torque. And this car is mated to a 7-speed dual clutch transmission instead of the automatic in the T-Roc. And this is a pretty good pairing, I would say. I mean, you even get some paddle shifters you can play around with. Overall, I think the car actually drives better than most of its competitors. Yeah, the Puma's probably a bit sharper, and there's a couple other cars that are a bit more comfortable as far as plushness, but this is a well-rounded option. It's got a great value mark on it. There's a couple of quirky Skoda-isms that every model has that most of Australia probably won't find useful, but we might actually find here in the southeast. One is the fact that if you open the filler flap in the back, you'll find a ice scraper next to your fuel cap, just in case you have frost on the front of the car. And in the driver's door, there's an umbrella. Pretty cool, actually. Last time I saw an umbrella in the door, it was in a Rolls Royce. So how's the cockpit in the Kamiq? Well, from the driver's seat, feels pretty good. You sit in these nice new bucket seats, which are like a sport effect, and they hold you pretty well. The red stitching is really nice, and there's some great features on them. The steering wheel itself is nice in the hand. It kind of reminds me of the GTI steering wheel. Some red stitching, and just, it's a good size. Directly in front is Volkswagen Group's beautiful digital driver's display, which is highly customizable and super smooth to use. Probably one of the better ones in the business. You also get a nice big infotainment screen in this Monte Carlo model, which includes wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Gripe with this is that it's pointed away from the driver, but I can forgive it. Throughout the cabin, materials are nice-ish. I mean, they're cheaper than Volkswagen materials, but overall everything feels of quality. You also get a wireless charging pad here in the middle and some controls in the middle as well. My one big gripe though is this armrest, because it's just a little too short, but I can forgive it considering the size of this beautiful sunroof. So how's life in the back of the Kamiq? Well, it's actually very comfortable. Plenty of knee room, plenty of leg room, nice, easy, comfortable position. Everything is where it's supposed to be. You have a couple of vents here for aircon, as well as heated seats in the back of the Monte Carlo, along with the heated seats in the front, a couple of USB-C points. I reckon it's probably a bit more comfortable back here than the Yaris for sure, and definitely more room than in the Puma, but there aren't any cup holders, but you do have this big sunroof again, and it makes everything feel nice and bright. So how's the boot in the back of the Kamiq? Well, to start, you do have an automatic door in this Monte Carlo model, and it goes up fairly quick as well. But once you get inside of this nice, quick automatic door, there's plenty of space in this Monte Carlo model. This car has all the netting attached as well, so nothing's going to move about. There's a few cubby spaces for plenty of things to be seated and not have to worry about them rolling. You also get a bottom mat which flips on carpet and plastic side. So if you have some dirtier items or mud, you can put it on top and not have to worry about ruining the rest of the boot. The seats do fold down flat, and there is a space saver spare. So what's the tops, bottoms, and final verdict on the 2021 Skoda Kamiq? Well, on the bottom are a few things that are mainly technology based. One is the fact that this DCT transmission in this car doesn't feel as well calibrated as some of the stablemates like the Polo or the T-Cross or the A1. That just seems a bit clunky at times. The adaptive cruise control, not overly well calibrated either. It sees cars in other lanes and adapts to that instead of the car in front of you. It just doesn't seem overly intuitive. And the park tech is good, but the park camera seems a bit old, it's a bit grainy, and the lines that are there aren't actually with the car in view and just doesn't make much of sense. So what's on top for the Kamiq? Well, there's actually a ton of things to like with this car. It's great to drive, easy to live with, plenty of room, very comfortable, and it's packed full of technology, especially when you consider its price point. A lot of its competitors are a bit more for the same amount of tech. And with Skodas, you don't see very many, so there's a little bit of exclusivity here. So that's my final verdict on the brand new Skoda Kamiq Monte Carlo. Well, I think this car is a fantastic value proposition. It packs a lot of tech into a pretty good package and a decent price. So if you're out there looking for a small SUV and don't want to spend too much, definitely check it out. Some great features on the inside, not the outtide, but the inside.